Now, and in continuing with the story, see, and here's where the storyline kind of starts to get a little bit fucked up. But thankfully, people forgot all about this one. That was namely because the game was well, I don't know if it was a ginormous failure, but anyway, because the next installment was Blood Omen 2.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I understand now about Blood Omen 2. Uh, okay, so Blood Omen 2 came out in 2002, a year before Legacy of Kain Defiance. And from what I'm reading, the Legacy of Kain team had nothing to do with what was going on with Blood Omen 2.
Yeah.
Which kind of explains a little bit, sort of, but at the same time really kind of fucks things up, because for one thing, certain characters appear in Blood Omen 2 that are either long dead, or at least up to this point are known to be dead, like Vorador is in there, and he's been fucking dead for hundreds of years. Vorador's there, and as far as we know, he's still dead.
Yeah.
And there's no explanation given as to why they're there and how.
It's just, I'm here, bitch.
I'm here.
And, what?
Yeah.
Wait, aren't you supposed to be dead?
I don't know.
It's like, details. I'm just here.
Yeah. And I mean, part of the problem of Blood Omen 2 is that it's not a very well told story. I mean, it is its own story. It takes place between the storylines of Blood Omen and Soul Reaver, where it still takes place probably some odd 100 years or so before the events of Soul Reaver. So, like, while Kain and his vampire army are still trying to set up their own empire, they come upon the city of Meridian and like the Hilden Lord, who somehow brings back the Seraphand, even though they've been gone for hundreds of years. And he defeats Kain in single combat. Because Kain is half dead, his body goes into hibernation, and so when he awakens, he's severely weakened. And so part of what the game is it's a little bit like Soul Reaver, only not so much. I mean, there are a few other kind of interesting mechanics that are introduced. There's a stealth mechanic. There's somewhat of a climbing mechanic. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's a little too slow at times. It's a little too clunky.
Yeah.
And I mean,
they tried rather hard, but they just, for some reason, were not able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Either due to gameplay or just plot, kind of plot holes.
Yeah. Another common problem I remember with Blood Omen 2 is that I remember a lot of times during cinematics and such, sound would go away or sound would glitch out.
Yeah.
Like how, like, I remember, like, the very last, one of the last story cinematics between Kain and the Hilden Lord, it suddenly glitches out and ends, just like abruptly, and it's not supposed to. It's supposed to keep going. It just suddenly randomly happens. Like, oh, well, okay. And I mean, again, I mean, like I said, I mean, the story for Blood Omen 2 is just not very well told. And I mean, again, I mean, because the Legacy of Kain game team had nothing to do with this game, it really kind of shows.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, I think from what I remember, it was not very well received. Let me actually look it up real quick. It received It received about an average reception, with critics citing its lower production values and lack of innovation relative to the Soul Reaver games as flaws. So I think it did moderately okay, but just not as good as the games before it.
Yeah.
The series. And so, moving on from there, we come to kind of the last game, or at least the last game that involves this storyline and these characters. Legacy of Kain Defiance. This was the very, very last game in the entry, and this was another game I was really excited about because, I mean, I cared about the story, so I wanted to see how it was supposed to end.
Yeah.
And this one changed a lot of things. Okay, so the main game mechanic all throughout a lot of the games was it was very much a third-person action game with puzzles and a few other minor little mechanics. I mean, like in Blood Omen, there was a lot of magic, and there were a few abilities that you had that you could use. You could turn into mist. You could take the guise of a human, in order to fool other people around you. You could turn into bats. You could turn into a wolf. In Soul Reaver, they got rid of that mechanic, and it was just all about just hack and slash and feeding on souls and killing vampires. Same thing with Soul Reaver 2.
On blood, glorious blood.
And then Defiance, kind of the core mechanic in that one is that you switch between playing either as Kain or as Raziel, like all throughout the game, which I really loved. And there wasn't too big of a difference. There was slightly. I mean, Kain was a little bit slower, but stronger. Kain and Raziel was faster.
Yeah, Raziel was a little bit more acrobatic.
Yeah. And anyway, getting back to the main storyline. So, because of the events of Soul Reaver 2, because Raziel is horribly weakened when Kain saves him from his soul nearly being devoured by the Soul Reaver, he finds himself back in the spectral realm with the Elder God. And apparently, hundreds or perhaps even thousands of years have passed since those events. And so when he emerges, he finds himself in, I believe, it's about the same time as when Kain is still a vampire youth, and he's going around on his original quest. And where Kain is, he's still in the past during the Seraphim Crusades. And so Raziel, he's on a quest to try to find the heart of Janos and return it to him and resurrect him. And Kain has to basically stop him, because if that happens, something horrible will supposedly happen. We don't know what yet will happen. And we learn a few other... I'm just kind of winding myself by having to remember and go through the entire story of this game series, because there's a shit ton of stuff you got to go through.
Yeah, which is taking us a while.
Yeah, and well, anyway, there's another revelation where the two opposing sides, the vampires and the Hilden, who are this ancient demon race, they both had these different premonitions of their own champions. One with a sword of fire, which, as Raziel takes it, is meant to be him with the Soul Reaver, and then Kain wielding the physical Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
And well, anyway, Raziel finds the Heart of Darkness, which Mortanius used in which to create Kain, which makes a lot of sense, because they took a shit ton of old storylines and they did a very good job of weaving them all together so that they made sense. And then supposedly kills Kain when he rips it out of his chest.
But surprise, he doesn't really.
Well, I mean, he doesn't.
He's still alive.
Well, I would imagine it's because, as long as if the heart still beats, he still lives.
Yeah. But now it's no longer in his chest.
Yeah. And so Raziel goes and finds Janos' body, which Vorador discovered and kind of has enshrined in his mansion.
Yeah, didn't you also find out in Defiance that it was actually Vorador was turned into a vampire so that he could forge the Soul Reaver?
Well, okay, so here's a lot more backstory. In the original, as as part of the history, vampires were the original guardians.
Oh, yeah.
And and they fought this evil ancient race because originally their god was also the elder god who they worshipped.
Mm-hmm.
And well, when they first fought the demons, they then created the pillars in which to banish them into whatever spectral realm it was that they went into.
Yeah, but the demons, before they got banished, cursed the vampires with immortality.
With immortality and a bloodlust.
And bloodlust.
Now, and because of both their because of their immortality and their bloodlust, they could not have children.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, they were not able to pass on down their line or keep the pillars in balance, because only vampires apparently are powerful enough to be able to be balance guardians and such.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever a human child was born who was meant to be a guardian of one of the pillars, the vampires would have to take those children and have to give them the dark gift. Eventually, the humans rebelled because of a few other guardians, Mobius and Mortanius, who led them against the vampires, and they rejected the curse. They started a war against the vampires, and they kicked the shit out of them, apparently.
Well, mostly because a lot of the vampires were basically committing suicide.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't deal with both the bloodlust and immortality.
Well, and there was also the fact, too, that their selfish douchebag of an elder god decided to turn silent, and he turned his back on them.
Yep.
Because he could no longer feed on their souls.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I mean, it's this long, overwhelming chain of just manipulation.
Yep.
And so I think Vorador was also one of the last vampires that was made, before the rebellion happened.
Yeah.
And he was actually the one who forged the Soul Reaver. Yeah. He just wasn't aware of whatever magic it was that the other vampires placed on it. Yeah. And so anyway, Raziel resurrects Janos and brings him back to life. But upon doing so, well, Janos takes him to the original sanctuary or kingdom of the vampires, and presents him, because all throughout the game you've been collecting these different elemental powers for the Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
That is, meant to empower it and make it stronger, namely to help you, with specific puzzles and doors and such.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you get this sort of eternal light soul sphere or Soul Reaver that basically purifies the Soul Reaver. And actually, when you do this, you meet this newer and more pure version of the Balance Guardian, Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
Because in fact, in Defiance, when you meet her much early on, she's still in her horrible decayed phase, and she is well aware of everything that's going on with Kain, and they're basically manipulating him and using him and everything, and she just doesn't care, because the whole time she thinks oh well, once all this is done, Kain, he'll take his life, and then I'll
be free. And Raziel basically is if you're waiting on Kain to do that, he's going to disappoint you.
yeah, which is just great. And in fact, there's another great scene in Soul Reaver 2 between Ariel and Raziel, where she's lamenting about the fact that she's still bound to the pillar. And Kain is now, ruling his empire and going about and doing whatever the hell he wants and just damning the world. And Raziel goes on this long speech about, have you ever actually considered the fact that even if Kain did go through with his sacrifice, that you might still be bound here, that it would have changed nothing? And and there's this great final scene between the two of them where she begs Raziel and basically asks him, why are you hounding me like this? Why won't you give me some peace? And Raziel just starts just starts ranting at her like, "Oh, really? You mean like the? Oh, really? You mean like the mercy that you showed the other guardians when you set Kain upon them? Or how about the mercy that you showed Kain when you kept him ignorant of his true purpose? Or like the mercy that you showed your beloved Nepraptor when you made him Kain's first kill? Like, bitch, you have nothing that you can ask for. You have been far more evil than I have. You've done far worse things than I have.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not by your own hand, but you certainly, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, you certainly set things in motion.
Yeah. But she appears before you, and well, because of the lighting of the Soul Reaver, it has widened her gaze and allowed her to see that, oh, everything that I knew before was wrong. And I can see that now. And then through this new enabling of the Soul Reaver, you're you also have another lovely confrontation with Mobius, who Kain kills again. And well, after he's fallen and dead, and sent over to the spirit world where Raziel is again, he runs him through with the new endowed Soul Reaver, and because of that, Mobius is then able to see the evil, disgusting octopus, soul-devouring god that he worshipped.
Yeah, it's
like,
oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of disgusting, ain't it? Now I'm going to devour your soul, and then use your body to get back to the mortal world.
Yeah. And in that knowledge, go and feed it. I release you. And
to the wheel.
And well, there's also there was also something else that we skipped. With Janos, we see the pillars are destroyed upon Kain's refusal for the sacrifice, and when that happens, he's possessed
by he who shall not be named, or the unknown one, or
the
whatever they called him.
The Unspoken.
The Unspoken. Yeah.
Who I guess is meant to be the leader of the Hilden demons. I mean, we're not entirely sure exactly what his role is, but he's supposed to be this very important role. Well, I mean, as far as I know, he was the one who possessed Mortanius and who killed Ariel.
Yeah.
Originally. And so he now possesses Janos, and he's the one who kills Raziel, and kind of sends him back into the spirit world. And basically with this new and more powerful body, he's going to go about and go do something nefarious. We don't really know what.
Yeah.
Maybe those elements might have been explored a bit more in Blood Omen 2, but because it came out so much earlier, it leaves out a shit ton of other plot holes. And just in case if anybody asks or actually says anything in the comment section, in Defiance, when you resurrect Janos asks about Vorador, and Raziel tells him that Vorador is dead.
Yep.
Now, and from what I understand, in Defiance, there was supposed to be a cutscene where Janos rescues Vorador. But because that doesn't actually happen, and he's said as being dead, we're basically supposed to take that as its word. So, so sorry, people. And anyway, after that whole event, after everything, and Raziel kind of thinks to himself, well, what the hell do I do now? And finally realizes that he has to confront Kain again, and uses the new embodiment of the Soul Reaver in order to heal Kain and allow him to be able to see what he couldn't see before, and that was the Elder God. And then Kain and him have this final showdown, and the game kind of ends on another little cliff note, or I'm sorry, a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Where
which kind of stinks, really.
Where Kain he kind of looks upon the horizon, which you see, is the broken pillars and kind of the sun rising, and kind of thinks to himself. I forget exactly what the last line is. He says something like, "But Raziel gave me one last gift, that last foolish little glimmer of what could be possible, hope."
Yeah.
And then the game ends. So.
And just. Well, I remember there being something about being able to see the strings and being able to actually sever them now.
Yeah. Well, basically, he talks about how the master of the puppets have been revealed.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, whether that's satisfying
it kind of leaves it open for like another possible game that they never were able to do.
Yeah, which I think might be the case. And I mean, there has been a lot of talk, and there have been a lot of people who would like to see. Well, I mean, myself, I would like to see some other, remakes or whatever of both Blood Omen and Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see that. I would love to see these stories explored a little bit more, and I would like to see certainly a satisfying ending for this story and for these characters.
Yeah.
The only thing that we got coming out right now is a game called Nosgoth. I'm not sure exactly when it's supposed to be coming out. I have no interest in this game whatsoever. Especially from the second that I heard about it, that it's a lot like that Shadowrun game that came out some odd years ago.
Yeah, it's kind of a multiplayer type game, but doesn't really have any story or anything.
Yeah. Supposedly, I guess it's being developed. One of the publishers for it is Square Enix Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And while it will take place in the same universe as Legacy of Kain, it's not going to feature any of the characters. There's no real storylines, basically just an online multiplayer game between two factions, between the vampires and the vampire hunters. And for someone like me who's a fan, just makes me go, why should I give a fuck about this?
Yeah.
I mean, I see no interest in this.
Yeah, I really don't either.
And so anyway, one other cast member that we forgot to talk about briefly is, and I'm going to horribly mispronounce his last name, Rene Auberjonis, who did the voice for Janos Audrin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that probably the only role that everybody really knows him from is the character Odo on Deep Space Nine. He's done a lot of other stuff. He was also in the second Uncharted game. And yeah, that's right. He did the voice for one of the characters on Archer.
Which one?
He was the German assassin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And like quite a few other stuff too. It says here he's been on NCIS, Warehouse 13, Grey's Anatomy, Criminal Minds, blah blah blah, just all sorts of stuff. He was also in Fallout New Vegas. He played Robert Edwin House, whoever that is.
Oh yeah. The guy kind of when you get to New Vegas that kind of provides you with a lot of the missions from then on.
Oh, okay.
Basically, this guy who, through technology, managed to keep himself alive is kind of this decayed husk that can only communicate through a computer.
Oh, okay, cool. He was also in the Avatar, The Last Airbender TV series. Did you ever watch much of that show, or did you?
Yeah, I did. I watched the entire thing. I'm trying to think who he would play though.
He was the Mechanist. He also did a few other voices too. He also did Jan Jin Leader, whoever that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Legacy of Kain series was certainly a game series that, I mean, it's one of the only game series that I've played where I've ever been so enveloped in both the characters and the story and the history of
To where you actually, to where like most things you just kind of gloss over, like the cinematics or read like the little things. You just kind of gloss over that. Legacy of Kain was like the only one to where I actually sat there and actually wanted to get every bit of detail on.
Yeah. It's kind of that same mentality for people who have for those same people who just love the Metal Gear Solid stories and such. And while those are probably just as complicated as this, I would actually be willing to wonder, like, which exactly. Well, Metal Gear had a lot more games to it, though, and certainly probably has a much bigger fan base.
Yeah, well, and it's been around longer.
Yes. So I would probably have to say the Metal Gear story is probably a tad more complicated, despite the fact that it doesn't involve time travel, but I mean, it does kind of fuck with its own storyline a lot.
Yeah.
Where like certain characters' motives change and then kind of twist and turn and such, and then like ridiculous revelations. I mean, like the whole fact that like, okay, so I hate to go off on a tangent here, but I have to mention this. Okay, so when Metal Gear originally started, it was, just meant to be a simple standard, stealth action game. And then with Metal Gear Solid, it suddenly decides, oh, that big bad guy, big boss? He was your father. But it acts like, well, Snake knew and they fought each other and he killed him, blah, blah, blah. That's not at all how it went in the original Metal Gear at all. He was just a random bad guy. That was it. Yeah, but instead, it decided to kind of change its whole storyline to try to add story where there really wasn't one.
Wasn't it kind of revealed that it wasn't so much that the big boss is like your father, is that you're a clone of him?
Yes. Yeah, well, that I think became apparent a little bit later, but yeah. And actually, oh man, I mean, you want to talk about fuck up story continuity. Are you familiar at all with the Castlevania the Lords of Shadow series that's currently going on?
No.
Well, Lords of Shadow 2, they were doing a Let's Play of it on Rage Select, and there's this like literally 11-minute long cutscene that happens. Apparently, Castlevania is trying to be just like Metal Gear now. And I'm not joking, 11 minutes.
Okay.
Where it explores the original storyline and then fucks with its own continuity. Okay, so like it takes all of the original games, all of the original NES games into account, but then decides to fuck with that. Like, for example, Trevor Belmont, who, in Castlevania 3 was meant to be the very first Belmont.
Yeah.
Wrap your brain around this. He is the one who becomes Alucard.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Alucard's like supposed to be Dracula's son, man.
Well, yes, but like how they explain that is that, well, when he fought Dracula, he failed and he died, and then Dracula realized, no, wait, you're my son, wait, I don't want you to die, and then he gave him his lifeblood, but supposedly it didn't work, and so he set him to sleep in his coffin, and then some odd 100 years later, he awoke, and he forgot who he was and became Alucard and swore revenge against his father, and then he and Simon met up, and then they fought Dracula, but even though those were supposed to be the events of Castlevania 3, where Trevor and Alucard fought Dracula, but instead it's like
God, play it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's not how that went, but because you guys are trying to fuck this storyline up so hard, and oh man, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's pretty goddamn ridiculous.
And it's kind of like George Lucas coming along and it's like, well, that's just microscopic organisms. Your blood called midichlorians. And then it's never mentioned again.
Well, yeah.
Because even he realized how stupid that was.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was that, but there was a lot of other stupid shit that went on in the prequel.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We could do a 3-hour rant on that alone.
Well, hell, I mean, we already did that, I think, as our second episode for this
I
show.
know!
So anyway, that was the Legacy of Kain series. I know there are a shit ton of fans who not only want like an HD sort of collection on these games. I mean, I would love to see that, but more or less, I think I would like to see a remake of these games, but it would have to be done with a lot of love.
Yeah, they would have to get like the original cast and writers all together again and just do it from the ground up.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And hell, I mean, if Square Enix is willing to get their hands on this series, I mean, since they're I guess obviously producing and publishing Nosgoth, I would love to see their cinematic style done with the Legacy of Kain series.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see that. I mean, they know how to do cinematics.
Yeah, they do. It's always been Square Enix's strength.
Yeah.
Gameplay is kind of hit and miss with them.
Yeah. Well, gameplay and story is always a real hit and miss with them.
Yeah.
All right, so what would you like to have be your final last words, or really just anything else, Andy, that you'd like to say on the Legacy of Kain series?
Mostly just like you, I'd like to see a remake done of it, but done really well. And I'd like to see a satisfactory ending to it. I'd like them to just go from where they left off with Defiance and just come up with a satisfactory ending.
Mm-hmm.
An actual end instead of a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess from what I understand about it, let me actually see, how did Defiance do? Consequences. The game was praised for finally answering many questions posed in previous installments, but criticized for its repetitive gameplay and awkward camera controls. So
I don't remember the gameplay being that repetitive, but the camera was a little wonky, especially by today's standards.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I haven't played it for a while at least. Looks like on IGN they gave it a score out of an 8 out of 10. GameSpot for the PC platform gave it a 6.9 out of 10.
Wow.
Team
GameSpot
Xbox
really doesn't like it, does it?
well, I mean, that's about average.
Yeah.
Team Xbox, which I wonder if that's a website that still exists, gave it an 8 out of 10. GameSpy gave it 3 stars out of 5.
Okay.
Which is okay. I mean, so far, well, and
it got some decent review. It got some decent scores there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, scores from critics can be one thing. It's really more or less, how the game is received, by fans and by the public at large.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is the game selling ridiculously well, or is it not selling at all?
Oh, yeah.
Because
there was, I think it was called Above Darkness or Beyond Darkness or something like that, that the critics really loved, but it sold horribly. Nobody, mostly because it was just really badly advertised. They didn't even have advertisements for it in magazines anywhere. It was just really horribly advertised, but it was like apparently just a really fun game.
Did you ever play it?
No.
Ah.
And I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing the name of it wrong.
Okay. What system or platform was it for?
PlayStation 2, I think.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, so then it's...
Yeah, it's old.
Yeah, okay.
But, and, it did get, like, eventually a cult following.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and as most things do, when that sort of thing happens with a particular game or series.
Yeah, it was a platformer, but it was just done really well. You basically kind of play as this photographer whose uncle is a pig for some reason.
Oh! You're talking about Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew I was saying the name of it wrong.
Yeah, that actually got an HD remake release a while ago.
Yeah.
And I think, from what I understand, I think they might be making a sequel. I'm not entirely sure. There was a teaser trailer for it.
They kind of hinted at it, but they haven't really heard anything about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, people, that I believe will wrap it up for our discussion on the Legacy of Kain series. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Again, if you guys would like to check these games out, I know Blood Omen and Soul Reaver are both available on the PlayStation Network. They both go for about like $5. The other games I know you can find just about anywhere nowadays, particularly and probably only at like any used game shop. They are worth picking up and they are worth checking out. If you have any interest in them at all, I highly suggest you check them out. All right, so stay tuned because I know this coming weekend we shall be continuing our look into the Legacy of Kain series with Soul Reaver 2. And until then, we will see you guys next time for another episode of The Other People. Hope you've enjoyed. See you next time.
Bye, people.